Have you heard the expression you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink? It's an old one, so I don't blame you if you didn't. Okay, boomer, I get it. But how does this apply to comics? And why are so many people so reluctant to get help? Hey, this is Perch. It's a one true thing about comics I've observed over the years, and it's true with shops, it's true with creators, it's true with publishers, it's true with pretty much anybody in the industry. Is there's almost a reluctance to get good common sense help. And what I mean by that is that at times you'll see people make really obvious, really simple mistakes that if they just listened to a bit of advice or followed really simple guidelines, they would avoid. And it takes the form of everything, whether it's contracts for independent creator work, or whether it's shop owners who are opening up a new shop. I've watched people in this industry, and one thing that I think is really true about comics is that it's a very giving industry in the sense that there are a lot of people who love comics and there's a passion wrapped up in it, so they're happy to help. But what is also true is that help is almost always rejected or ignored or almost spurned. Like if somebody was kind of on the fence about what to do and they get some advice to pick path A instead of path B, people will pick path B out of almost spite. Like I'm refusing to do what you want, even though it's a bad decision and it causes chaos. And you see this all over the place, and it's always been true in the artistic community, sure, but you see it a lot in comics. And I give you some very specific examples. I mean, I already did on the storefront. There are a lot of retailers who will join Facebook groups or get accepted into various email chains or threads or whatever. And you will see people offer suggestions like, hey, make sure you understand about the zoning here, make sure you understand about some of the requirements around signage and things you can put in the door. And if you want to do a free comic book day someday, make sure that you make sure that the place you're moving into doesn't have some restrictions against that. That there's a lot of little things that kind of come out of nowhere, and you'll see a lot of retailers offer these suggestions, and then you'll see people just completely ignore, discount, not want to take them, and it's really frustrating because you have people who are willing to pass along their knowledge, but others who just seem to want to fail, to do it themselves. You take a look at on the publisher side. Take a look at Peter Simeti, who's got Alterna Comics, and he's been kind of investigating, experimenting with a large number of different distribution ideas, direct to consumer, direct to store, bypassing Diamond, going to places like Sheets, and just working with newsprint, working with other things. It's kind of astonishing that in a lot of cases Peter Simeti is giving away his knowledge either on YouTube or on Twitter, wherever he happens to be. He's freely just telling people what they can do. He's offering his help. He's sharing his IP in many cases. And you see, do you see thank yous? Do you see, hey, this will really help me out? Do you see any of that? No. In fact, if anything, you do see the opposite, where you see people like, oh, he's offering to help and he's talking to the wrong people, so he must be a Nazi sympathizer. It's the weirdest leap. I mean, for those of you who haven't been involved, and you may have your own opinion on this, I haven't ever heard anyone give a credible, underline the word credible, reason why Peter Simeti and Alterna is the arm of the alt right, other than once upon a time, Peter Simeti either, I don't remember if he liked or he retweeted or he just said thank you in a reply on Twitter to something that I believe Richard Meyer, the diversity in comics guy, posted, and that alone got a bunch of people mad. In particular, the weirdo who does the art prints that are borderline illegal down in Austin. Any of those, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but basically, got a bunch of people who seem perpetually looking for people to want to go to attack, and and so rather than say, hey, let's see if we can learn from this guy and how he's marketing. I mean, let's even say you hate the Richard Meyer guy, and you hate that whole the Comicsgate people, and you hate all that, and you think Peter Samedi is like the secret mastermind of all of it. Let's say you're convinced that it's all an evil plot with Peter in the center of it. If Peter is giving information, wouldn't you take it? I mean, even if it's like ops against the enemy, wouldn't you just take it? Why would you go immediately on a flame attack? It's just so bizarre. And then Peter followed up later saying that they don't allow people in Alterna to use block bots. And it was never very clear to me if it's a don't allow or a highly discourage, or I don't know what it is. But anyway, so that got people mad. A bunch of people quit their comics and said we're pulling our book from Alterna and all the rest. And they're welcome to do that, but what a dumb thing to do. So you have a policy that you don't use block bots. Block bots are not blocking people. It's where you're subscribing to a list that's going to automatically block what can be tens of thousands of people based on who they are following, or follower lists, other things. These bots have been created. I've been hit by several block bots. I think because I'm not sure who I was following at the time, or may not have followed, to put me on that list. I know that somebody at one point had put me on a list for misogyny. I that one baffles me to this day. Other than there's some weirdo who was making that claim earlier on. But again, take the help, take the advice, learn from your enemy if you truly believe he's an enemy. The strange part about comics is this almost desire to want to go to war right away, rather than learn from people who may have information you don't have. And if you're in other businesses, I mean, in particular, the interesting one is, a lot of comic folk want to leap over into Hollywood. One of the things they will tell you in Hollywood, that is if you know any producers, writers, people who are trying to peddle scripts, is even if you despise someone, even if you hate someone, even if you think this person is the enemy, you smile, you play nice, you learn what you need to learn, and then you distance yourself. And the idea there is just, don't close the door on good information, because that good information could be helpful even if you don't like the person giving it. I have never seen any credible explanation for why Peter is an evil, awful person, other than people just didn't like him. I mean, maybe he just needed to follow along with that chant of "I denounce Comicsgate" on Twitter. Maybe that's what he had to do. I don't know, but it is silliness. The pressure that went on for that was goofy. But then on comics as well, you'll see writers, or you see people do successful things. You'll see people put out a successful book, or you see somebody put out a successful project. And again, you would think that there would be a drive to kind of learn from what people did. I mean, Tom Taylor did a successful Deceased series. And it was interesting to watch the creators on kind of more the indie horror scene, say, yeah, I'm not touching that. That's corporate garbage. No, I'm not doing it. Taylor's it used to be cool, but now he's an egotist. I mean, and these are people who claim to be kind of friends, but they weren't going to learn anything from that book and that success that happened there. I find it odd. So I'm curious if you all do as well. I think that it's aggravating for these two pieces to come together. Because again, a lot of people in comics, fans, retailers, readers, creators, whoever they might be, there is a deep love for comics that exists, and yet there is this real reluctance, this real pushback against learning from each other, helping each other out, creating a true network and a true community. The problem with comics in a lot of cases is that the community is very superficial. If you go on Twitter or on Facebook, you will see comic creators, saying, "Hey, you really deserve this award. You're the best." You'll see a lot of kind of surface, superficial praise, and you'll see a lot of small talk being made between creators. Some creators do nothing but small talk to each other. And then you go to cons, or you see these people in real life, and they badmouth each other behind their backs. I mean, I was astonished at a creator who was thanking a writer who was praising G. Willow Wilson for something that she had won an award at one of the cons, I think San Diego. I don't know. She'd won an award. And there was a bunch of tweets like, "Hey, way to go!" Including this creator who's like, "Hey, way to go! You did great. You did great." And then at the show, the person's like, "Ah, she's so stuck up. She's trash." And it was just it's the most shallow, hypocritical stuff in the world. So I just am surprised, especially with comics, the desire for people to want to get into comics, to want to grow their careers in comics, to want to do their own indie books. I mean, the most astonishing in all this is not the people at the big two level; it's the indie creators. I think it's the most amazing scam that the people who have used the block bots most aggressively are the indie people, the people at the lowest level of entering this business. And to me, that's just cutting your own throat. I mean, there's just that's not a good idea. You're small. You're trying to get bigger. You should be trying to grow your audience, not subtract from it. And so running things like block, I mean, to me, it's just ignorance. And I think there's a lot of folks who just don't understand really what they're doing, and it's crazy. But anyway, what do you think? Have you ever noticed this phenomenon of this kind of cattiness, this eat your own kind of mentality within comics, and this deep desire to not communicate and to not take the good advice that is handed to you? Has anybody else noticed that? Leave me a comment below if you have. Be curious to get your thoughts on the matter. Like, subscribe if you don't mind. Subscriptions help me know that this is content you like, you want to see, and you want more of. So always appreciate that. If you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.